I want to thank everyone for coming to this presentation on 21 CFR Parts 210 and 211. This is going to be an overview of the regulations. This is typically what's called the GMPs, certainly for the drug industry. This is the GMPs. This is presented by Compliance Insight, and you could certainly visit our website, compliance-insight.com. That'll give you a lot more detail of this. This is going to be a quick overview of this. And I'm going to go over some of the highlights of the GMPs. Part 210, it's the status of the regulations. I'm going to talk about it setting forth the minimum requirements for your company in meeting the GMPs. It covers manufacturing facilities controls for making, processing, packaging, or holding a drug product. Failure to comply will render the drug to be adulterated. It's critical to remember that when you get a 43 or a warning letter. The person who is responsible for the failure to comply shall be subject to regulatory action. Notice here it didn't say the company, it said the person. 210.2 applies to drug products for human use. Very simple. The definitions in here, it talks about various things in here. It's very critical for you to understand these definitions. And here are some of them we'll go over. Act means the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, FD&C Act. Continue with definitions. Batch, it's a specific quantity of drug material intended to have a uniform character and quality produced under some type of manufacturing order to form a product in the same cycle of manufacturing. A component, any ingredient intended for use in your drug product, including those that may not appear in the finished product, such as water. Drug product is your finished dosage form. A fiber, any particulate with a length at least 3 times its width. Very critical for you to remember that. Active ingredient, any compound intended to furnish some type of pharmacological activity. A drug is defined by the Act as any compound that has effect in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, or to affect the structure or function of the body of man or animals. That could be almost anything by this definition. In-process material, any material is fabricated, compounded, blended, or derived for use in the drug product. Manufacture, processing, packaging, or holding includes packaging and labeling, testing, quality control of the drug products. Quality control means any person or unit designed by or designated by the firm to be responsible for duties relating to quality control. A representative sample, samples drawn on rational criteria that you state up front, intended to accurately portray the material being sampled. Now, 211, here we go. This is the meat of the regulations. This is what everything goes into. There are 11 subparts defined A through K. I'm not going to cover those specifically. If you look through your GMP booklet, you'll find those things. It covers all sections of operations. It's designed to be all-encompassing, general. Don't expect too many specifics in these. The goal is to tell you what to do, not how to do it. This is the goal. I'm not going to tell you how the path to get there. Subpart A, general provisions, gives you the scope, definitions, minimum requirements applies to drugs for human use, and definitions set forth in 210 are applicable. I'll talk about 211.22, responsibilities of the QC unit. Shall be a QC unit. It says shall be, not should be. They shall have the responsibility and authority to approve or reject all components, containers, closures, in-process materials, packaging, labeling, anything. They have that authority. Authority to review production records. If errors have occurred, that they have been fully investigated and resolved. The QC unit shall have adequate laboratory facilities. They shall have the responsibility for approving, rejecting all procedures or specs impacting the quality of the drug product. Responsibilities shall be in writing, and those things in writing shall be followed. 211.25, personnel qualifications. Everyone shall have the education, training, and experience to do their jobs. If you do not, then you're in trouble. Everyone who supervises those people shall have the education, training, and experience to assign functions to provide assurance for drug quality. There shall be an adequate number of people in those areas that are qualified to do the work. 211.28, wear clean clothing and protective apparel. Practice good sanitation and health habits. Limit access to areas that are in control. Don't have it open for anyone to walk through. If you're sick, do you belong in the area? Make sure you have some controls in place. 211.34, consultants, myself included in this, shall have sufficient education, training, and experience to advise people on the subject matter. You don't want to bring me in and have me consult with you on something that I have no idea about. You want to look at what your consultant or your third party can do for you and make sure they can actually do that work. Records maintained stating the name, address, and qualifications of the consultant kept at your firm. Subpart C with this, talking about some of these items here. 211.42, any building shall be maintained to facilitate cleaning, maintenance, and proper operations. You'll have adequate space. You'll have operations performed in defined areas, receipt, storage, holding, etc. All operations covered by this. Penicillin operations in separate areas. Anything that's a penicillin, cephalosporin, anything along those lines, separate areas, separate buildings, separate people, everything. 211, 44, and 46. 244 covers lighting. There'll be adequate lighting provided. It doesn't tell you what is adequate. You define that. 46 talks about adequate ventilation to control whatever it is you need to control. Adequate equipment for control of the environment, microbiological, dust, air pressures, airflows, whatever it is, it's there to control it. Air filtration shall be provided. 48 is plumbing. Potable water supplied under continuous positive pressure, not flowing, but it's under continuous positive pressure. System would be free of defects that would impede the quality of the material coming in. Potable water meets EPA requirements, and there's the code for that. Drains of adequate size so you don't have backup into the area. And there'll be an air break provided or backflow prevention to prevent the sewer or the drain from flowing back into your areas or your sinks, specifically in a sink and a cleaning area. That's very critical to remember that. I'm going to talk about 211.50 and 52. 50 talks about sewage and refuse. Dispose of trash, sewage, other refuse in a safe and sanitary manner. 52. Washing and toilet facilities. Adequate washing facilities shall be provided. You'll have hot and cold potable water. You'll have soap and detergent. Air dryers or single service towels provided. You aren't going to have towels sitting in there like you have at your home. Easy access to working areas. You've got to have people have ability to get in those areas and clean up. 56 talks about sanitation. Facilities maintained in a clean and sanitary condition. Free of rodents, birds, insects. Shall be written procedures on how to clean those areas, including schedules, methods, equipment, material, whatever it is, tell them how to do it. There shall be written procedures for rodenticides, insecticides, fungicides, whatever it is you use there, how to use it, who uses it, what type of material is going to be used, where will you put it. And your key with all that is prevent contamination in your product. 58 talks about maintenance. Facilities shall be maintained in a good state of repair. Other than the picture shown on this slide here, you want to keep their facility looking much better than that. 63 and 65 talk about equipment shall be of appropriate design, adequately sized, and suitably located to facilitate operations, cleaning, and maintenance. Equipment constructed to be not reactive with your product. And lubricants, coolants shall not come into contact with the product to alter their quality. 67. Equipment and utensils cleaned, maintained, sanitized often enough to prevent contamination and malfunctions. Written procedures for cleaning and maintenance of equipment and utensils used within the manufacturing process area. Make sure you have written procedures on how to keep those things clean and in control. Maintenance, cleaning, sanitizing, and inspection records, you have to keep those. 68 talks about automatic, mechanical, electronic equipment, computers, etc. used in manufacturing realm shall be routinely calibrated, checked, and inspected per some type of written program with retained records of that calibration, inspection, and those checks. Change controls, input, output verification, and backups. Make sure all those are in place and you have it written and you keep the documentation of those tests. 72 talks about filters. Filters shall not release fibers into your drug product. If fiber releasing filters are necessary, additional filtering using a 0.22 micron or better porosity, 0.45 of manufacturing conditions so dictate. You really have to have good rationale for doing this. If you're using some type of a asbestos containing filter, I can't imagine why you'd have to do that, but there are probably some out there that do. Make sure you talk to the FDA about this, and you have to go through and really put things in place to show them that it's safe and secure. 80 is talk about general items, written procedures for receipt, sampling, approval, rejection, everything. Handle and store materials to prevent contamination. They're bagged, box items stored off the floor and be adequately spaced for cleaning and inspection. Each container of items will be identified with code of the lot received and the status. Status being quarantine, approved, rejected, something along that line. 82 talks about receipt, storage of untested items. Perform visual inspection for correctness of the item, any damage, any contamination, whatever it is, upon receipt. The items will be quarantined until they're inspected, tested, verified that they meet your requirements, and released. 84 talks about testing, approval, and rejection. This goes into some caveats here. Each lot must be held until QC release. Sampling is based upon appropriate criteria. The samples cleaned where necessary, obtained in a way to prevent contamination, sterile equipment when necessary or clean as needed for the material, no compositing of subdivided samples. If you have to sample top, middle, bottom for some reason, you don't want to composite those looking for striation. Samples identified with lot number, container, date, etc. Containers must show the samples were taken. That's why you see the containers that say sampled on them, and that is clearly indicating that this container was sampled. 84, continuing with this one. This is a long one. Sample testing. Conduct at least one identity verification. You test your components for conformity to specifications. A certificate of analysis is okay if you're qualified. Test containers and closures for conformity to specifications, bottles, caps, whatever they are. A certificate of testing or conformity is okay. Microscopic tests of components if appropriate. Establish contamination spec if the item is subject to contamination, whatever it happens to be. Look for those things. And conduct microbiological tests on items if it is indeed microbiologically viable and that contamination may be present. Continuing on with this, any lots of components, drug products, containers, or closures that meet those requirements for ID, strength, quality, purity, related tests may be approved, and those lots that don't are rejected. 86. Use of approved components. Use FIFO when possible. First in, first out. Retesting of approved components. After storing for a long time, you want to make sure you test those things. After exposure to some anomaly, make sure you test them. Rejected components, you make sure you ID those and they're quarantined to prevent their use. The containers, closures, shall not be reactive, additive, absorptive. You don't want to have anything that you put a product into that's going to affect it adversely. They have to provide protection from external factors that could contaminate or deteriorate the drug. Clean and suitable for use, sterile, as an example. Written procedures, test methods to be followed, how to clean it, how to sterilize it, how to depyrogenate it, whatever it is. 100 written procedures, deviations. Have written procedures for production and process controls to ensure that your product has the ID, strength, quality, purity, and it's approved by the QA/QC unit. These procedures shall be followed. If not, you have to have a deviation. It's recorded and justified. 101. Charge in of components. Charging. Each batch formulation should attempt to make 100% of the specified active ingredient. When a component is transferred to a non-original container, it shall have the name and ID code, receiving or control number, weight, measurement in the new container, batch for which that material is designated. Continuing on with this, supervision of weighing operations. QC release component only. Weight or measurement is correct per the batch record. Containers are properly identified. Each component added to a batch will have a verification by a second person or a second system that is validated and qualified to work as a second person. 103. Calculation of your yield. Actual yields and percentages of theoretical yield shall be determined at the end of each appropriate phase of production. Calculations be verified independently by a second person. 105. Equipment ID. All containers, processing lines, major equipment. I'm not talking about scoops or spatulas, things along that line, but major equipment used during production shall be ID'd to indicate contents, phase if necessary, whatever it is. Major equipment shall be uniquely identified and shown in the batch record to indicate that equipment in which that batch was processed on. 110. Sampling and testing. Procedures shall indicate in-process controls and tests in order to validate the performance and monitor the output. Whatever that is, here are some examples. You want to make sure you have that in place. Continuing on with that, in-process specs shall be consistent with your final spec. In-process materials tested for ID, quality, strength, purity, accepted or rejected by QC. Rejected material, quarantined, put out of the way, and rejected. Time limitations. When appropriate, time limitations for each phase shall be established. These are your hold times. If you take it from one step to the next step and there's a hold phase in there, how long can you hold it there? Make sure you gather data with that and validate that step. 113. Control of microbiological contamination. Appropriate written procedures to prevent microorganisms, bacteria, in drug products. Make sure you control that. Sterile or not, you want to make sure you control all that. Appropriate written procedures for preventing microbacteria in sterilized drug products is very critical. Those procedures shall include any sterilization processes. 115. Reprocessing. Written procedure describing a system for reprocessing anything that doesn't conform. Reprocessing will not occur without review and approval of the QC unit. Talk about packaging and labeling control, going through this here. 122, materials and examination and usage criteria. You have written procedures for how to receive it, how to ID it, how to store it, how to handle it, how to sample it. It's everything. There would be sampling and examining of materials. Materials not meeting those specs are rejected. Records are kept. Labeling materials for each product will be stored separately. Access limit to authorized personnel for those labels. Destroy obsolete and outdated material for labels. Gang printing is prohibited unless differentiated by size, shape, or color. I can say this was something far back that I dealt with. I have rarely met people in today's age that do gang printing. There are a few out there that do it for specific reasons, but they are very, very rigidly controlled. Cut labeling, you dedicate lines to each product and strength, use electronic equipment to perform 100% inspection, or visually inspect it using a second person to verify it. Printing devices have to be monitored. Printing issuance, use strict control when issuing. Compared issue materials to a master label. Reconcile the quantities used, returned, issued. Make sure you have a very tight control in there. All excess material with lot number destroyed. Return materials stored in a way to prevent mix-up. Procedures will detail control of these processes. Make sure it covers everything. 130. Packaging and labeling operations. Physically or spatially separate materials to prevent mix-ups. Set aside filled but unlabeled product. This is what you call nude labeling, and it's nude containers that have nothing on it. You ID the group to prevent mislabeling. Manufacturing history of the product must be available via a lot number or a control number. Batch records must reflect examination for correctness of labels. And packaging and labeling facilities must be inspected before and after those labeling operations and reflected in the batch record. You want to do line clearances. Tamper-resistant requirements for over-the-counter material. All OTCs for retail sale, except for throat lozenge, some items listed there, have to be tamper-resistant or they're considered adulterated. Tamper-resistant products have one or more barriers or indicators that show visible evidence of breached integrity. Whatever those are, make sure you've got them in place. I give the two items here. Continuing on with this, prominent statement indicating to the person buying it, the consumer, that tamper-resistant feature is there. If it's been breached, how can you tell that? Request for exemption from tamper-evident petition. You have to go through and plead the case with the agency as to why you're exempt from this. Continuing on with this, OTCs subjected to NDA requirements must notify the FDA of packaging changes. And just some specifics here with this. Understand your requirements when it comes to some of the previous acts in the Congress and the government of the United States as to how you need to act and move forward. 134. Drug product inspection. Packaged and labeled products should be final inspected to assure correct labeling. Sampling of units shall be collected and looked at. Results of the inspection recorded. Expiration dating. You will have stability. You'll collect it. It'll be on your label as to the expiry date. Products that must be reconstituted, freeze-dried, must have an expiration date for both the reconstitution and the unreconstituted material. Expiration dates, again, on the label. Homeopathic drugs are exempt from this. Allergic standards labeled no U.S. standard for potency are exempt. New products for investigational use are exempt, but you do have to go through and start collecting that data. OTCs are exempt if labeling does not have dosage and are stable for 3 years. Drug products must be quarantined prior to QC release. That's 142 in the warehouse. Storage conditions must not affect the drug product adversely. Light, temperature, humidity, whatever it is. 150, distribution. Oldest products are distributed first. It's called FIFO. Deviate is permitted if it's temporary and appropriate. Document that. System must be in place to readily recall distributed product if necessary. Traceability. 160. Specs, standards, sampling plans, test procedures, anything along that line will be reviewed by the quality unit. Deviations must be recorded, justified. Lab controls must be scientifically sound, and calibrations performed, specifications in place. 165. Each batch shall meet final specs prior to release. Lots have to be free of objectionable microorganisms, meaning you have to understand what is objectionable. Sampling and testing described in the procedure. Accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, and reproducibility of test methods established, documented. Lots not meeting specs are rejected. 66. Stability shall be done. Results shall be used to determine storage conditions and expiry dates. Written program about how to do that has to be in place. 170. Reserve your samples of product. You have to take those and keep them. Has to be representative of each lot. Twice the quantity of a full battery of tests. Has to be final product and has to be API at a minimum. This talks about lab animals. 173. Maintained and controlled. 176 talks about penicillin controlled in separate facilities. If you go into that, make sure you have those things very well controlled and thought out. 180, general requirements about documentation. Retain docs for at least 1 year after the expiry date, or for certain OTCs, 3 years after distribution. All docs readily available for review. Docs can be copied. Certainly, you have to make sure those are copied in a way that are appropriate. Data shall be evaluated at least annually. This is where you get your annual product review requirement from. Procedures established to assure that management are notified of investigations, recalls, and FDA issues. How does management know when this goes on? 82 and 84 in this. 182, records of major equipment, cleaning, maintenance, except routine maintenance, and use shall be documented. 184, records shall be made on components, closures, containers, and labeling. Name of the supplier, dates, testing, individual inventory, all those items have to be kept. 186, master records maintained, made by one person and checked by another. Name and strength, dosage form, name and weight of the API, total weight of each unit, complete list of components, accurate statement of the weights, reasonable variation, and theoretical reconciliation to control your process. 188, batch records maintained for each lot include dates, who did the work, raw material, inspections, investigations, all those items there, very typical. 192, records reviewed by the quality unit, any issues resolved, investigations performed. The investigation shall extend to other batches that may have been associated with the specific failure or discrepancy. That's really going into investigations. You want to make sure you cover yourself on that and look at things systemically. 194, label or lab records include complete data from all tests, description of the sample, statement of the method, what you did, all the raw data is kept, and it's checked by a person with their dates and initials. 196, distribution records maintain who, where, what, and what quantity. Complaint files have to be maintained, investigations have to be performed, include the name, lot number, if appropriate, if you have it, name of the complainant, nature of the complaint, the reply, the investigation, everything you did. 204, talk about this. That is, returned products have to be identified and held appropriately. You have to understand if conditions of the return or the storage are in doubt, investigations are warranted, and procedures shall be in writing for how to do that. 208, this is where we talk about products subject to improper storage conditions due to a disaster or an accident shall not be salvaged. What do you do with those things? Throw them away. Unless you can test, showing everything's okay. That takes a lot of testing, a lot of data, a lot of understanding. Evaluation of conditions indicate the product was not exposed to those harsh conditions, whatever they may be. Really, you want to make sure you've got your bases covered if you do that. Have any questions on this? I went through this very, very quickly. Certainly, check out our website, compliance-insight.com. We've got a lot of info there about GMPs, about 210, 211. You can certainly call us with any questions, 513-860-3512. You can certainly send me an email, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Thank you for going through this. I know this is very quick and a fast overview. I can tell you this, when I train people on the GMPs, it typically takes me all day. So you're getting something in a very quick standpoint that usually takes me about 6-7 hours to go through. And if you have any questions, certainly call us up. We offer a free consultation over the phone. Give us a call. We'll try to go over these things with you and help you out. thank you again for listening to this and watching this presentation, and I appreciate you having gone through this. Thank you.